So I think from a health side, keeping a family, personal, work balance is highly critical. In fact, like as a business, one of our values is life is bigger than work. So when it comes to challenges on a life side, be it health, be it stuff personally and family, you need to be able to prioritize that stuff, otherwise you're never going to do your best work.
Pete,
Nathan?
how would you rate your overall well-being on a scale of 1 to 10?
Sure. Ask the hard questions and start. I'm going quite high, like 8.5.
And a reason why?
I think it's been a tough year. So I've had one or two health challenges that have kind of, with my body physically, that have impacted me. But on top of that, it's still just been a great year personally, kind of family-wise, spiritually, business-wise. It's been very full with some really cool stuff.
I'm glad to hear that. And speaking about health, in my opinion, it's the base pillar for us to thrive as individuals. So what did that teach you about health in general? Did that plant any seeds in your mind?
Yeah, so one of the things I've been, I think as an entrepreneur, you kind of dive into things head first, full steam ahead, and it's easy for things to become all-consuming because you're continuously thinking about business, that kind of stuff. So I think from a health side, keeping a family, personal, work balance is like highly critical. In fact, like as a business, one of our values is life is bigger than work. Because it's easy for work to be bigger than life. So when it comes to challenges, if you have like on a life side, be it health, be it stuff personally and family, you need to be able to prioritize that stuff. Otherwise, you're never going to do your best work. Things are going to be kind of out of whack. So I think, like our bodies need downtime, and we are going to pick up the odd sickness along the way, and if we are applying huge amounts of pressure, your body's never going to get healed and healthy. So I think kind of getting balance right is critical.
And what does a work-life balance look like for you?
So for me, I need to be able to kind of at 5 head home to the family and have time with the family. So I think, and that's one thing, and it's what I've really been thinking about a lot about this year, is actually being present in the moment. So often you can get home to your family, but you're thinking about the 10 things at work you haven't done. So for me, and I'm definitely not perfect in any shape or form, I've got a long way to go, but for me, kind of like that family time when you're home, and I've got kind of kids ranging from 15 till 9. So that time, they need time, they need time with you. So, and that kind of time after work before bedtime is key for me. So I think that getting that kind of balance right on the family side is important, and on weekends being able to kind of actually spend time with them and be present. So that's one thing that's key for me. And then I'm a big backer of like having a Sabbath, like having a day off, and actually not working and not thinking about work. And I think the latter is harder. Not thinking about work is, especially if you're having a quiet day, your mind often wanders to things. So it's actually being able to say, no, let me spend time with family, spend time praying, just, kind of doing those kind of things. So I think balance-wise, those are key for me. And then obviously to get that balance right is holiday time.
And how have you learned to be more present?
So definitely, if you ask my wife, work in progress. And I think it's kind of deliberately going, I'm here, I'm with my wife, or I'm with my kids, or I'm friends, let me focus on that. Even like doing this now, I'm like, all right, work can wait now. Like, let me push it back. Let me actually be present and engaged. And I think sadly, the culture we live in is just so much to do continuously. Like there's so much going, you just don't have that kind of time to disengage. So I think being present has been good. Also for me, like I've just realized, like personally as a Christian, just like actually spending time in prayer. Like if I do that, I nearly have. It surprisingly gives you more headspace and capacity and faith and to get through the day. So all of that is kind of helping me surprisingly be more present in a moment.
I like it. I want to go back to your childhood. What do I need to know about your childhood for me to understand who Pete is?
Yeah, very appreciative that I've got a mom and dad who love me no matter what, and both are still married and love each other, which has also been great, kind of growing up in that kind of environment. I definitely think there's huge benefits in kind of coming from a loving background. So feel very privileged for that.
And in terms of your thoughts and beliefs and what shaped it, how much did that early environment, influence your thoughts and beliefs?
Yeah, I think highly. I think kind of growing up in an environment where off that base anything is possible. Also being very privileged in going to a really good kind of government school was also like, you're in that kind of stable environment, I think made it quite easy to try out things, do things, made it quite easy, I think, to experience what was fully available to me. So to be honest, feel very privileged that I could have that kind of upbringing.
And what was the environment like in Cape Town in the late 90s when you were in high school?
I think because I was a kid, I was protected from a lot of the fear factors. So I think the generation above me as a white South African, very fearful of what's going to happen. So from my side, I just saw the positive side. Suddenly it's like there's equality. I can even remember being in like the lower grades, having a black person in the class for the first time. Okay? And, and not even realizing, and I think this is, as a kid, you're quite oblivious, especially as a white South African, being oblivious that there was even segregation. You just weren't aware of it, and then suddenly seeing that kind of change. So I think it was, and then because the change was happening, it was being explained. So it was actually quite a positive experience in that regard, seeing that kind of change and dynamic happening.
Professionally, from there, you decided to pursue marketing?
So I studied at Stellenbosch. I didn't really know if I wanted to go into, I have two brothers in the conservation area. So I didn't know if I wanted to go into conservation, wildlife, or kind of more business marketing side. So I actually did agree that was open to both and use it as an opportunity to kind of explore both options. So once again, felt very privileged that I could even do that. And then after that, I went to a place called Red and Yellow, which at that point I realized I think I prefer people to animals. So decided to go to Red and Yellow, which is really hands-on experience in marketing. So from that point knew, okay, this is definitely marketing is what I really enjoy doing. Felt it allowed me to bring my skill sets I could learn.
And working for Global Creative, so yes. How different was marketing back in 2007? Were there any timeless principles that you would still apply today?
At Global Creative, for reference for everyone, we were in the film industry, so we did books and movies, distribution and publishing. So the most famous of the lot was Faith Like Potatoes, which was like faith-based movie that was kind of big in that generation. So those kind of principles. Overall principles, I realized like that kind of marketing culture, especially if you're doing film or movie, you're trying to get someone to engage with your content and pay to buy, back then it was a DVD, or pay to go to a cinema. So it was incredible principles, like the basic stuff of like, how can I position this product, this movie, in a way that someone wants to see it. So a lot of the basics of what I understand from marketing is, where possible, get other people to talk about your product. So in fact, we did a roadshow through the country where we invited in each. So, and we went from like PE to George to Oates, like weird and wonderful places and the bigger cities. And in each city, we'd invite kind of a base of influencers before they were influencers, kind of people that were either senior in their work position, because it was a faith-based movie. We'd get a lot of like kind of pastors from churches. We'd invite them. So we did, instead of doing one like grand opening, we did like hundreds of them, and that built that concept of people talking about it. So they went back to their communities, their areas, and spoke about it. So I think that principle's been there since forever. As soon as you can get someone else to talk about what you do and for them to invite people. And it's funny, those skills I still use now in what we do.
Amazing. And you were instrumental in starting D6.
Yes.
Could you walk us through how you started?
What happened is at the end of that, I'd met a couple of guys and they were running a newspaper that was being, basically you get everyone to publish content from the schools. They send you content, you print it, and then you send it out to the schools. And these guys were like, could we not do the same for varsities? So you go to somewhere like Stellenbosch, you get all the reses or the faculties to publish, give you content, you sell the advertising, and you sell it through. And this was kind of 2008, which is just when, every now and again, I'm a genius. It's when all the money was going into digital, and genius me was printing a physical newspaper. So there was no budget going into it. But what happened is, as we were doing this kind of varsity paper, and I had a business partner that was doing it within sports, we're continuously looking at other levels of engagement, of going, okay, well, how can we translate this? You know, we physically publishing content. Should we be going web, or what should we be doing? And we met this guy by the name of Mark Parsons, who had developed this app. And this was when you still had dumb phones. So the phone and apps was not even a thought. What it was is he created this pop-up on your desktop or on your computer. You would install a disk and then you would download this little app and it would pop up on your computer. And Mark had developed something for cricket, so South African cricket. So it updated you with live scoring and everything. So we started engaging with him, and then he actually said, he came to us the one day because we were kind of said we could resell his products into the market, and he came and he said, yeah, I was at my kid's school the other day and in the queue for the parent-teachers meeting, and the people in the queue were moaning about how they never get comms from the school. So I was like, well, I've developed this thing for cricket kind of SA. Why can't we just do the same for the school? So I developed this little thing, and Mark and we were like, well, let's see it, because of the experience of kind of this newspaper within schools. We looked at this and we were like, this thing has legs in the school space. So we said, listen, can we test it in 5 schools? So we rolled it out in 5 schools, and essentially we gave it to the schools for free. And then we went to people in the industry to advertise, and everyone wants to be linked to the school, but there's not enough opportunities to sponsor stuff and get your brand shown. So it was quite quick to fill up the advertising spaces. So we had 5 schools with these desktop apps. You turn on your computer in the morning and up would pop the D6 school communicator, and you could get all the news, and you could get alerts and reminded of everything, and you could see the calendar and all of that. So it was kind of game changing. So the other guy I was working with, Leon, we spoke to Mark and we're like, listen, let's take this to market. So there's serious legs for this. Let's just roll this out to every single school. And he was keen. So we raised money, went to an investor, raised cash, and formed what then became kind of D6, the school communicator.
And when you eventually left, I read something like there were over 500,000 parents that were on it, and over 1,200 schools.
Yes.
How did you grow it?
So we formed the business, and it worked out that there were 4 shareholders and partners, and the other guy who I mentioned, Leon, and myself were on the sales side. So I, in fact, initially focused on the sales to the advertisers. So our model in that case was we realized the principal of a school generally could sign off anything up to about 5,000 Rand. So we set our setup fee as 5,000 Rand. And then we knew from experience that we could monetize it off the advertising. So we kind of went to market quite hard in that regard, going, okay, let's give it to the schools. Let's make it a no-brainer for them to take it, a once-off fee, and then they never pay again. And Leon was just phenomenal. He's one of those guys that you put him, and he's a former rugby player. He's connected with the sports guys. You put him into school. By the time he's left the school, he's got a signed contract, and the principal's inviting him for a braai. He's just got one of those people. So also because we raised money, we could raise a sales team. So we had about 7 people. So we had someone in KZN, people in Joburg, people in Pretoria, people in the Cape, and they literally just went knocking on school doors. And we did that principle I mentioned where you get other people to talk about your product. So very quickly in each area, we got 1 or 2 schools that were references and asked, and because they were getting such great value from it, we were like, listen, introduce us to the schools in the area. And sure enough, these guys would email, and they all knew the principals at the other schools, and they're like, guys, this is pretty much like a free product. You pay once off. You've got the product. It works. It's changed how we communicate. So it became that process of kind of getting it out. And literally our sales team then, it was going out, especially in the school and the education space. If you're dealing with a principal, like they want to see you. If they like your product and they see you and they know you're not a fly-by-night, they'll sign. Actually, I remember one of the first conferences we went to was SAOU, so in Afrikaans, Suid-Afrikaanse Onderwyser Unie Association, so South African Schools Teachers Association. So I'm very English and hanging out with all these very Afrikaans principles. And I remember the one came up to me, and this was the first year we were exhibiting. He's like, yes, I really like this product. So being the good salesperson I'm like, in my best Afrikaans, here's the contract, sign away. And he's like, no, if you're here next year, I'll sign up. And I'm like, why? He's like, I just want to make sure you're credible and you're going to be here for a long time. So we found the easiest way to build the credibility was to actually get other schools to share they were using the product, and guys like that then were quicker to kind of sign. So we saw very kind of quick sales in that, and then very quickly went mobile as soon as we could. So there was a mass debate. We had a BlackBerry app, and then the mass debate was, should we go Android or should we go iOS? Because at that point, very few people had smartphones. So we were like, which one should we go? Is one going to be dominant? But we're sure BlackBerry will be around for forever. So we actually developed iOS first, and then very quickly realized that we needed iOS and Android, and that BlackBerry was non-existent. So we were there at the beginning of BlackBerry and the end of BlackBerry.
What made you leave?
2 of the other partners, so the technical guy and then the person representing the finance that invested, had an offer to be bought out. So we had a group of business people from Paul that came in and said, like, listen, we see what you're doing, we want in. So 2 of the partners at that point said, okay, cool, we're going to sell our shares. And they had a great return on their investments. So they stepped out. At that point, these other business people came in, and then so it was the 2 original partners and these new investors. And as we did that deal, another kind of company in the education space was buying up edtech businesses, so in the education space, and they were like, why don't you guys tell us you were selling? So obviously the new investors were like, we can flip this at a profit within 6 months. So they actually sold it straight off to these new guys at a decent markup within like a 6-month period. And at that point, the deal was going to be a holding company was going to buy us. So if we wanted to retain shares, we would have had a small share in the holding company. And I just realized I was going to end up with like 0 point whatever percent of a holding company with no real influence. So at that point, I said, okay, rather buy me out.
And what did you learn when it comes to selling companies? If you could give us 3 tips to look out for.
Don't sell a profitable business. I should have said no. I want to keep my shares, and because I've seen the growth of D6 has been amazing. I would love to still own a share in that business. The D6 guys are really doing well. So I think often as early stage you step out a little bit kind of too soon, but it's also at that point I was at peace, pray about it. It was the right time for me. So I've got no real regrets in that regard, but I would have loved a little to retain it rather. So I'm actually, I think from learning experience, you really don't sell a business that often. And I think everyone who does sell a business, it's going to be a different set of circumstances. But I just knew for myself where I was at, the things that were important for me in a holding company, I would not be able to have them.
Okay, and your transition into starting School Advisor,
yes,
what was that like, and how did that start?
Okay, so I feel like School Advisor was where D6 was this radical, cool growth. I think School Advisor was the one that was my humbling experience. So out of D6, I took a 5-month break and said, listen, at that point, our third child who's adopted had arrived, and I was like, this is amazing. I can actually be at home for a period, so it was great. I used to take him for walks every day, so it was absolutely amazing. And I thought you don't often get an opportunity just to take a couple of months off, so I took that period off. And then coming out of D6, one of the things I'd realized was schools have more suppliers than any other organization. There are multiple people. If you think about a school in a way, it's like it includes what an office would have with 100 staff members. Your tea, your coffee, your devices, your internet, all of that. So that's one set of purchasing that happens. Then it's got the equivalent of a gym for all of the learners. So you've got the equivalent of a Virgin Active gym with all of that kind of equipment. Around that is the swimming pool, your field. So you've got the equivalent of a whole sports club. Then you've got, on average, 650 learners that then need textbooks, stationery, uniforms, tables, chairs. So there's all of that purchasing. Then you've got like the equivalent of the boarding house, you could either say, depending on the school you went to, it could be like a hotel or it could be like a prison. It depends where you went. But there's all of those purchasing decisions. So what happens is you end up in this place where you've got school staff that are phenomenal teachers, phenomenal managers of people, but suddenly now they're making all of these procurement decisions with no procurement experience. So I realized there's got to be a way to help these schools procure better. And coming from the D6 side, we knew how hard it was getting into a school. So you have this amazing product that will value schools, but you just can't get into them. So with School Advisor, we're like, there's got to be a way to solve that problem. So raise money and started School Advisor. What we did is schools generally work on a 3-quote process. They need 3 quotes before they can make a decision. So we created a platform where schools could rate and review other suppliers that they work with, but then they could also request 3 quotes. So very simply, then we would connect them with 3 suppliers that could quote them. But what we found is the business model was very flawed. It wasn't, schools are still requesting the same stuff they always use. They don't know what's new and available. they often would have a preferred supplier. So they just come into us for quote 2 and 3 to tick the block that they've done it. So what we found off it was the listing platform where schools were rating other suppliers was the best part of it. And the rest actually just didn't help the schools. It's kind of saved them a couple of hours, but didn't really fundamentally change anything. So it was one of those kind of your seed capital disappears, and then you kind of scrape through. It's like those moments where you realize the basement actually has a cellar. You're like, can it really get this bad? And then you drop another level. So we've recently, about a year ago, relaunched School Advisor, and it's working. And we've now run tenders for schools.
Okay, so you didn't actually pivot to Schoolscape.
We did pivot to Schoolscape. We kept School Advisor going, and relaunched it about a year ago. But maybe let me explain Schoolscape first. So what happened is, as part of School Advisor, we attended a lot of events, to school-based events, to meet with schools to say like, hey, here's one platform that you can see all these, so like expo space. We would exhibit at all of these events, and there was an event that doesn't exist anymore. It was a big commercial event, and myself and a colleague attended. So Ash and I went, and we walked away after exhibiting at this conference just going like, man, that was a bad conference. We didn't meet any decision makers. It was very expensive. You have these big expensive stands, and we just didn't get a return on the investment. And we were like, well, we're dealing with all the schools. We're dealing with all the suppliers. We want to connect schools to innovative companies, and we're doing it through an online platform. Maybe we actually need to go a little bit more old school and run our own event. To connect them, and through that get more exposure to School Advisor. So we said, well, let's do it as a separate brand. Let's start up Schoolscape. We ran an event, and we basically said to the schools, like most events they go to, they're going for the pedagogy or the connection opportunity, but they're not going to look at products. And then all these products are shoved at them, and it's just in the way. So we actually went to the schools and we said, like, listen, we're going to run an event and we're going to throw a whole pile of products your way. But one event, you can do your procurement for the year. And the schools were like, oh, we actually like this idea. So no long, boring sessions. Go around. We promised them great coffee. And so through that, we ran our first events. And then the schools were like, well, we want more like this. And they got bigger and bigger. So eventually School Advisor was just running on the side, but we had pivoted and we were like, well, let's recreate this properly. And we set up Schoolscape.
And in terms of hosting events, what advice would you give to entrepreneurs wanting to host an event? What should they be looking out for? Some do's and don'ts.
So I think if you're an entrepreneur, like, especially, so I find from a marketing sales point of view, if I am a consumer, there's two ways I can buy a product. Either I'm going to go online and I'm looking for flights or shoes or a little bit of software. I can go online, I can see the reviews, and I can buy stuff. But if I'm in an organization, and sorry, this does answer your question. If I'm in an organization that's buying something that is fundamentally going to change how I do business, there's, as much as you want to sell online, every now and again you have to do face-to-face. So from an entrepreneur side, depending on the product you're selling, but often face-to-face will get you the sale more than anything else will, because often organizations, they want to see you, they want to know you. So my advice for any entrepreneur is if you can link events to what you do, depending on your product, it's a phenomenal way to sell a product as an event where there is that face-to-face component. There's something about seeing someone in person, demoing your product, being able to ask them questions, having a conversation. So to entrepreneurs, if there's opportunities to leverage events, once again, completely dependent on the product you're selling, it makes a lot of sense.
And what have you learned from virtual events?
So in fact, COVID did us a favor. So we school advisor, as I said, it was my humbling experience, like scraping through, realizing there's actually a cellar under that basement. Moving forward, then eventually we're like, Schoolscape makes sense as running these events. So we started building up, and literally COVID hit. Like, we just started building momentum. We're like, this works. Schools are loving it, suppliers are loving it. It's profitable in the mix. We want to ramp this up. So we had planned all this ramping up, and then COVID hit. So we had to go virtual. But what happened during COVID is a lot of the competition was killed out and couldn't sustain themselves. Because we were so used to scraping through with no budget, we could transition to virtual and still make enough income to survive because our base was so low. So it was actually a mass land grab. So we pivoted into virtual, and it's from a product demoing point of view, from showing a solution, it works well. You don't have that personal attribute, but you can still see a product and solution. So the virtual events, and we've kept a component of them actually on at the moment. So Schoolscape at the moment, we do physical events, we do kind of these road shows throughout the country, and then we still do virtual events, and they definitely have a pace. It's an easy way to pitch to multiple people. So from like virtual events have their place in the market. Our learnings though, like short and quick, it's like a fire hydrant experience. You don't want to go slow. You need to just lots of info so that you keep them engaged. As soon as there's too much of a lull, you've lost them. They're going to do emails. They're going to do other stuff. So if you are doing virtual, it needs to be it's like they can't feel like they can look away. Because as soon as they look away, they're going to have WhatsApps popping on their phone. They're going to have emails. You've lost them. So you need that kind of intensity. So shorter, high impact. And we also found the best thing was we would actually get schools to present the solutions they were using, and then just put the supply up at the end. And that kind of works. So I think if there's any entrepreneurs listening in, would be virtual is a great way to communicate to a lot of people. But as soon as you stand up and talk, people zone out. So get one of your clients to talk. It makes a big difference.
Amazing. And your team, you happen to have, in my opinion, A-level players.
Yeah.
What's your secret to recruiting?
So interesting thing is I've never recruited through a recruitment company, and I've never put a job spec out. As I kind of shared earlier, I'm a Christian, and I literally feel like the right people have just arrived at the right time. So random examples, I like how's this for random, sitting in a church service, and the guy in front is like preaching, and he's like, hey, if any of you feel like you're just really stuck in the wrong place and you're not doing what you're called to do, stand up, we'd love to pray for you. So the person randomly who I've not really met stand up next to me, and then as she sits down afterwards, I'm like, oh, well, what are you doing? What are you looking to do? And she's like, I'm like, oh, well, would you like to come work with us? So yeah, like literally it's been miraculous. People have just appeared at the right time. So in non-spiritual terms, I suppose it would just be networking and finding people that you can work well with, and their character. Because that for me, like I feel like can they do the job? You can test easily, but do they have the character that when it's tough, they're going to still do great work, still be part of a great team? That's what makes a difference.
How would you define the mission of Schoolscape?
Okay.
What do you have envisioned for the future?
Yeah, so our sweet spot is kind of connecting schools and solutions. So that's what we do. If you sum us up and what we do, we connect schools with companies that can really help them, and ideally we want to see education move forward. Technology is not a silver bullet that's going to solve everything, but so the role of the teacher and the administration of a school is never going to go anywhere. But if we can make those schools more effective, we've won. So our mission really is we want to kind of move education forward throughout Africa. So we're now running events Cape Town, Joburg, Durban. We've just come back from, as mentioned, events in Zim. So we're looking to kind of move forward in those areas. We're also finding there's stuff that's not yet in South Africa that's overseas. So we're going to a lot of international companies saying, what you've got, come, let's roll it out together. Let's kind of do this thing. So mission is very much kind of using technology to enable teachers in schools and giving them solutions that can really help them. So a lot of the solutions are tech-based, but a lot of them are also like other practical things like charging trolleys. So you can have one school, 30 iPads that you can move from class to class. So now you can enable multiple teachers. Other stuff is as simple as we've got kind of companies that, I'm just trying to think of random, like we've got locker companies. You think of how many often keys get lost for the lockers and padlocks. So they've got an electronic solution that centrally a person can just release and open and reset passwords. There's a lot of technology to protect schools. So schools are cyber targets like you cannot believe, because schools are by nature very trusting people. So they are being ripped off left, right, and center. Like they've been locked out of systems, have to pay with bitcoins, emails are being intercepted. So there's all of that solution. So just to keep a school protected, obviously dodgy content on devices, etc. So there's just so much there that's around a school that can help them be more effective, and it can actually allow them to do what they should be doing, which is teaching. So mission is a big impact throughout Africa and just make schools more effective.
And what's your opinion on the future of education as a whole with the rise of AI and technology?
So we've in April just did a roadshow. So we went around the country and we actually had an AI speaker came and spoke to all of the schools. You must remember when Google came out. Actually, in fact, when the calculator came out, teachers actually protested that it was going to make kids stupid, that they weren't doing the sums manually. Then we see Google and the internet coming out and teachers going, they're not going to go to the encyclopedias, they're not going to research, but we know the calculator and Google have made our learners more effective. And I believe the same is there with the AI. And I spoke to one of the senior leaders of a top KZN school, and he was like, in 10 years' time, his learners that are coming through his school, if they are out looking for a job and they don't know how to use AI properly, someone with less skills but more experience with the AI will get the job. So his view at the moment, and I think I loved what he said, is he wants his learners to be the best AI users, because it's going to make them the most effective. And there's also a huge amount of research saying like AI by itself is not as good as AI with a person. So you can have substandard AI, or you can have a person who might not have relevant skills, but with AI becomes more efficient than AI by themselves. So I believe there's going to be a huge role in our future workforce being able to effectively use AI to make them more effective.
I also agree with that. I heard a quote of AI will not replace humans, but humans with AI will replace humans.
Exactly.
Enabling.
Yeah, and I think it's called augmented AI. So it's like human and person. And what's interesting is we're actually seeing there's a huge amount of tools coming out making teachers more effective. So a teacher, say teaching maths, teaching across all the different grades in a high school will have whatever, 150, no more, like 200 learners. For them to know what every learner needs is impossible, but the AI that's now available will assess the kid, will say this is where the learning gap is, this is what you need to teach them, here's the tools to do that. So we've seen there's incredible examples like Reflective Learning as a company, proudly South African. It's now rolling out in the UK, other places, and they on maths and literacy. They've seen marks jump by 30%. Same teacher, better tools to make them more effective. So I think for Africa to compete on the world stage with how challenged we have with, budgets, etc., a little bit of AI supporting the teachers is going to make us highly competitive.
Yeah, exactly. You mentioned that you're part of a church and you happen to be an elder at the church.
Yes.
I want to know, how did that leadership of being an elder help you in business and also in your personal life?
So, great question. I think it helped me get the right church, school. Sorry, you can see I work with schools. The right business balance. Like I think that's also where that value of life. Life is bigger than work. There's going to come moments where your family's going to need you. Your community, in my case, then with the church, is going to need you, and work needs to be flexible. If we're all consumed by work, I think it's going to be damaging to the other areas of our life. So I think that kind of influence on me going, wait, you know what I mean? I need to get this balance right has been incredibly powerful. So I think it's allowed me to prioritize the right things. And I think within work is one component of who we are. We need that broad spectrum of other areas. For us to be who we want to be. So I think being privileged to be able to play a role in my church has been amazing. It's it's allowed me to have a whole other area of involvement. Every now and again it comes with a bit of I find business, you can make a mistake. You can be like, let's try this. Client wasn't happy. But in church, it's real people. It's it's not like you can you don't want to mess with people. You really want to do stuff like prayerfully and know that if you're speaking to someone or encouraging them in their walk, that you're not doing them you enable, you're empowering them, you're giving them truth. So I think from that kind of side, it's been pretty cool. It's basically made me pray a lot.
And how have you learned to improve your leadership to others in the church?
So I think within church, there's immediately, if you're going to play a leadership role. And, within business, you're selling a product or service. So you're coming up to someone, here's a product or service, out. Where churches, you're not selling a product, you're actually doing life with someone. So I think it's really helped me seek people first. It's easy selling a product. I can be like, Nathan, you need this product. If you're a school, I'm like, this is how we can help you. But when it comes to church, it's like it's walking a path with someone. It's actually getting to know them. It's building community. Like Jesus said before he went up to heaven, he said, go and make disciples. So it's one thing telling someone about Jesus, is another thing walking a path with them, letting them see freedom in their life. So I think from a development side, it's been really cool, been privileged to walk with people and know people like that.
How similar is it to coaching people?
So I think coaching is you're trying to give someone a set of tools that's going to help them be more effective and help them brainstorm ideas and let them be more effective. Where I think, to use the word like discipleship, it's allowing them to experience the full freedom of what God has for them. So within Jesus, so it's not necessarily. It's kind of giving them foundations, like truths in their life. And I think that's where it gets really exciting, where you see someone who's battled with low self-esteem or who has lived under fear, or even with sickness, these kind of things, like to be able to walk with them and see them in a place of freedom, I think has been incredibly powerful. So, and I think, yeah, so same, like coaching requires, and this requires walking with people, but within kind of walking with someone spiritually, you're not giving them a set of tools, you're rather trusting that they're going to experience freedom.
Okay, and how would you define freedom?
Freedom for me is living in the fullness of what God has for you. So, what have you got, a Mac? Yes. I give you that Mac, there's going to be stuff you can do in it. You give Steve Jobs the same Mac, he's going to take it to the next level because he knows how it was created and what it was created for. So I think the same when it comes to that kind of discipleship process, it's the fullness of knowing what God has created for, who you are, your identity.
And bringing this to business, how do you serve through your business for you personally as Pete?
Yes.
Do you think of it in that way?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like, when you find that business person that is in their sweet spot and it's just stuff's happening around them and they changing industries and they impacting, like, I believe the same, like, my business, as much as my role in the church, my business is having the same impact for God. Like, if you take, like, so the biblical story is Adam and Eve were created, they were in the garden, and God said, like, go tend the garden, like bring order to it. So I believe the same is for now, because that was going to be a blessing for other people. I think the same now with our businesses. Like, our businesses are impacting change in industry. Like, there's a huge amount of impact to be had there. So, like, as much as I'm a Christian, it's my business is an extension of my faith. Like, I get excited to think that if we can introduce a school to a product or service that makes them more effective, they're going to become better teachers. Those kids are going to be better. They're going to be, there's going to, the school's going to change. Future industries are going to change because of those learners going. Families are going to change. So I really think, like, my business is essentially me advancing God's kingdom.
I love that. Is it a perception that individuals need to see that what they're doing is in fact a service, an extension of perhaps their faith?
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think sadly we often look at faith being, okay, I've told someone about Jesus, you know what I mean? Like, and we separate our work and our life, and for me, is I want to tell everyone about Jesus because I love Jesus and he had a huge impact in my life. But I also know, like, by me serving an industry, just loving an industry, like impacting an industry, I'm stewarding that, and it's gonna have an impact. So that idea of kind of loving people through what you work is also powerful. It also makes, like, decisions a lot harder, but a lot cooler. Like, am I just ripping someone off and selling them something they don't need? Or have I actually created a product that is going to have an impact on my client's life, that they're not being ripped off? And I think if we can do business like that, your product's going to stand for itself and will grow and will be awesome.
Just on that point, is there a set of values that you would refer back to if that has to if that's the example of the case?
So love your neighbor as you love yourself, you know what I mean? Like, when I am dealing with someone and I'm selling them products, if I was on the receiving end buying that product or service, and I was sitting there knowing all the information I know, going, oh, I'm being ripped off or I'm being cheated or whatever, So I think that value of, as you like, love your neighbors, you love yourself. Like, am I going to treat this person how I want to be treated? Makes a big difference.
Amazing. Pete, thank you. Just a final question. There's a younger Pete that's listening to this. If you could, I know that you've given us so much of wisdom today, but if you could leave some parting words to this entrepreneur, what would you pass down to them?
I think, as I mentioned, like the last 7 years have been my really, I think the only way to, so my school advisor years before it became Schoolscape, and just, school advisor now is recreated with new partners, and it's actually flying, so it's been amazing. But I would have to say to my younger Pete, like, those years when I was scraping through, I think did more to develop my character, to develop my faith, to develop who I am as a person, that in hindsight, it was actually completely worth it. Even though it's those, like, I think there's a lot of pressure at the moment for any entrepreneur. You want that like growth. You want to be the future, whoever the next big entrepreneur is in the world. But like, the growth you have as an individual going through the hard times, I think, is powerful. So I would say to a younger Pete, like, and I think you don't see it when you're in the hard times. Like, I think being an entrepreneur, running an organization sometimes is one of the hardest things, especially if you start in a new organization, because you're kind of creating an unknown. It's not an easy path, so it can be hard. So I would say back to my younger Pete, like, it's worth it. Like the amount you're going to grow as a person, the amount you're going to develop is worth it. And then interestingly, you suddenly look back and you go, oh, that was cool. So I would say be at peace during the harder times.
Amazing. I think also what I'm hearing from you is focus on that internal work on yourself.
Yeah.
And the external environment will be a reflection of the internal work that you're doing.
Yeah.
So thank you for that advice. And I also want to acknowledge you not only for giving me your time today and giving us all this wisdom, but just for your presence in this world and the impact that you're making on the education system and all those individuals, not just the schools and your suppliers, but actually the kids that are on the receiving end of this. So thank you for doing that and just making this massive impact in Africa.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Pete.
Really appreciate it.